Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, you know, our number one visit at Open to Hope is adults losing parents. And we're going to have a great show on today with somebody who will inspire you and give you lots of ideas about how you can deal with losing parents and aging. So before we introduce our guest, I wanted to remind you all that my new book with my partner, Frank Powers, Dr. Frank Powers, is now out. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. As you know, the Surgeon General has said that the number one issue in America today is loneliness. And so if you're a person who's lost a partner and is looking for love, we hope you'll get our book, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating. By the way, 100% of the proceeds for the book go to the Open to Hope Foundation with the mission of helping people find hope after loss. Okay, Heidi, would you want to introduce our guest?
Sure, Mom. So like you said, we're going to talk today about losing parents and aging. And the research shows that most of us will only spend 40 to 60% of our lifetime on the earth with our parents, because our parents usually die before us. So we're going to be talking to someone more about what happens when we lose a parent. How do we find hope again after losing a parent? And we're going to be talking to Robin Finn today. She is an award-winning writer, teacher, and author of the new book, Heart.Soul.Pen, Find Your Voice on the Page and in Your Life. Her work has appeared in national and international press, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and more. Welcome to our podcast, Robin.
Thank you so much for having me.
And you know, it's going to be great to have you on because Heidi just lost her dad.
Yes, Robin and I, prior to this podcast, I think realized that your mother and my father died around the same time. My father died October of 2020. And when did your mom die?
June of 2020.
Okay. Yeah. And like we said, during COVID, which was very interesting. I will ask you your story, Robin, but in my case, my father was sick in the hospital, and as he got sicker, we kind of thought, okay, I flew out to California. I live in New York City, flew out to California 2 times and was not allowed to go into the hospital to see him. I really wanted to see him. I wanted to say goodbye to him. I wanted to be with him, and that wasn't possible, I felt very hard.
Yeah, very, very hard. I think COVID robbed a lot of people of that precious time at the end of the life of people we love. And I think for me also, beside not getting to see my mom, but also not getting to have my brothers come, not getting to have a proper, funeral, like to me, it made the grieving process so much more difficult.
And tell us a little bit about your story with your mother.
Well, my mom was doing great, and then she had a fall, and she lost her vision because she hit her eye. And I thought she was going to recover. I mean, I think she would have recovered. I really do. But because of what happened in COVID, all of the systems I had in place for her to have people to come to the house and work with her, and also even just taking her places, like everything came to a screeching halt. Yeah. And in that time where like I wasn't able to see her, she wasn't able to go anywhere, nobody was coming, she just really crashed. And so I really feel that her trajectory would have been different if it hadn't been for COVID. And then, I wasn't able to see her for 6 weeks. And then my brothers weren't able to come when we really realized, oh my God, this is really like end of life. Like I wasn't prepared that this was the end of her life. So I think for me, after I lost my mom, there was still so much shock and so much unresolved feelings, because all the rituals you have when someone you love dies, that just like didn't happen. It was like my mom was here and then she was gone. I talk a lot in my book when I talk about writing. I talk a lot about what wants to come forward comes forward, whether you want to or not. And I find that whenever I am writing, what I am writing about is the loss of my mother, even when I don't want to write about it, because it's still so present for me. It's like it's 4 years later. Ultimately, I work with a grief counselor because I felt like time was going by and I wasn't feeling any better. I wasn't feeling at all any better about, like you said, for me, the biggest surprise, I'd say, in losing my mom. Of course, I was very close to her. I knew I would be sad, but it was the loneliness. It is such a lonely experience for me to be on the planet without either my mother or my father. And I think that was a real surprise and something I still grapple with.
Well, your father died 10 years ago, right?
Yes.
And how did he die? What was his?
He had multiple myeloma, which is a kind of blood
Okay.
cancer, but he lived for 8 years and, was doing pretty well. And when my dad died, it was, we all came back home, my brothers and I, and we had a wonderful memorial for him. And, I still had my mom, the keeper of the history, the stories, the family, my childhood. I still had my mom as an anchor. Even things about my father I didn't remember, where he was born or where did dad go to law school or what happened, I could ask my mom. So I still had this whole connection to my own history.
Yes, that makes sense. And was there anything that you learned about the death of a parent after your father's loss that helped you when your mother died?
I guess the only thing I could say is I learned that there is a natural path for grieving your parent and that it should over time get better. And I think what I realized with my mom was like, a year or 2 years goes by and I'm not feeling better. That's when I realized like I think I need some help. And that's when I got a grief counselor who really helped me unpack that it was kind of a double loss. It was like I lost my mom, but I also was in shock from losing her the way I did in COVID without these guardrails that we have to walk people through the grieving process. It's such a mixed bag. There's the part of me that really is uncovering all the time the gifts my mother left me. When my mom was alive and we were so close, and she also drove me crazy. And so
Right.
I feel like there is always like the love and the tension, but now that my mom is gone, it's like I'm constantly uncovering and discovering the gifts that my mother left me and the ways in which she never will leave me. And that is happening. And at the same time, there's still a real resistance to letting go of her. And it's like I have a book coming out. I had author photos taken. I was so happy with how a lot of them turned out. The first person I want to send them to is my mother. Who
Right.
out how my hair looks in this black turtleneck? My mother. It's like there are things that I just say, who cares about the minutia of my life? Like my mom. I mean, there's just no replacement for your mom. There just isn't.
Right.
I'm curious, how much time did you spend with your mother and did she live by you and how often did you talk to her?
Well, after my parents lived in Florida. After my dad died, my mom moved to Los Angeles where I live. So the last 7 years of her life, she was here and she was incorporated so much in
Right.
my daily life and the daily life of my children. And she picked up my oldest at high school every Thursday between choir practice and school. And she, my other two, my son and my youngest, spent a lot of time with grandma. And she was just at the house all the time. And so her loss was so palpable. Like she's around the room and it's like, where is she sitting on her iPad playing Words with Friends? Where's my mom with her manicure with the different colored nails? And it's so, I think that was part of it too, that when I lost my father, he lived in Florida and I didn't see him in my house, in my yard, and my kitchen table the way I could feel my mom and feel the loss of her.
Yeah, I lived 2,000 miles from my mother. So I would talk to her weekly, but it wasn't part of my daily ritual, to be with her. So I think that also makes an impact. How much did you actually see this person? Not that, you're going to grieve any less, but you're just used to those habits, of it on a daily basis, which can make it really difficult. I wondered if you had planned any rituals.
Have a Shiva because we couldn't have anyone at the house. I mean,
Right.
I wrote a whole piece about like, where's the deli? It's like, this is a ritual where you have Shiva and you have these deli platters and you have everyone you ever knew comes by your house to give their condolences. And like none of that happened. I mean, I did have the cantor, on Zoom. Actually, the cantor came to my backyard and we social distance, and I had like 12 of my closest girlfriends come and but it was like I so needed those rituals and I didn't have them.
So
And
you did do some other rituals. Good for you. I mean, you tried to create some rituals.
we did the best we could, but
Right.
it was, like I said, it was the height of the fear in June of 2020. So people were not going out at
Right.
that.
Yeah.
They were not traveling. They were not getting on airplanes. It just wasn't, people were really scared.
Yeah.
So what you've really found is in dealing with your mother's death is writing. Is that your major?
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that's kind of difficult about midlife is that so often you're losing parents at the same time that your children are leaving the nest. And so it's like for me, I was such a busy person. 3 kids. My mom lived in LA. I was like, Mom, I can't even talk to you. I got to pick up this one and drop off this one. And this one's learning to drive. And this one, and I work and I have a husband. And then suddenly COVID. And then the last kid leaves for college. There's no mom. And there's this huge amount of empty space that I hadn't had in 20, 20 years. So, in terms of writing, I mean, I wrote every week during the time that my mother died. I had a blog. I started a blog. It was going to be my 50th birthday, and I decided to blog every week. I was going to post an essay for a year and talk about all my crazy things that were happening as I turned 50. And I thought it was going to be about sweating and the kids driving out, driving and something really fun and funny. And then like my birthday's in February. So a month later it was COVID and then my mother died. So I wrote every week for the year I was 50 and then I went another year. So for 2 years, I posted every week on my blog about something. And so much of that had to do with losing my mother, my children getting older, and kind of coming into this new place in life was like all the time I had longed for years, decades, was now here, but it didn't feel like a gift, I think there's lots of ways to like get connected to yourself. But as a writer, I blended spiritual psychology with writing and really worked with myself to allow my thoughts and feelings and what I like to say, unleash your radical self-expression onto the page, because the page is for me, my happy place, and to be allowed to write about what was present for me. And so often that was grief.
One of the things that you say is you kind of have to help some women unlock themselves.
Absolutely. I feel like it's so culturally ingrained in women, so many messages that actually keep us really distanced from our true self-expression. Things about what it means to be a woman, and you have to be good, or you have to be polite, or you have to express things that are pretty, and that keeps us from expressing rage and upset and grief and anger and any of these feelings that maybe are dark. And then there's the whole other issue, which I talk about a lot in the book, about how you're just not supposed to talk as a woman. Be small, be quiet, don't put a lot of attention on yourself, or you're bossy, or you're, all these messages that people often absorb when they're young, I think really hold women back from being able to write freely.
And so unleash those feelings. I mean, I have read her book, and I want to tell you, if you have any inclination that you think you might want to be a writer or what holds you back, or if you want to learn how to do it, get this book. because it can really help you move through this process. And I think it's perfect when you're grieving losing a parent or aging, or, the emptiness or loneliness. She takes you through on how you can write about this and really unleash it. And I love your idea. I mean, there are just so many ideas about writing and how you can use the page.
Thank you so much. I believe so passionately that, it starts with women being connected to themselves. That's why I say, find your voice in the page and in your life, because once you start to find your voice on the page and you start to write and become aware of how you even feel. I mean, so many busy women, we don't even know how we feel. We're so busy doing and caring for others. We don't even know how we feel. So I feel like finding your voice on the page, once you do, you can't help but find it in your life, and you start to.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, Robin. And it's probably safer to express your authentic self first in writing. And then all of a sudden it probably it brings that out, like you said, in your everyday life, which is amazing.
Well, and I think since we don't often know how we feel, a lot of times women who write with me are really surprised about what they're writing. And they'll say, like, I didn't know I remembered that, or I didn't know that was still bothering me, or I didn't even know I thought these thoughts. How can we as women express ourselves when we don't even know how we feel?
Well, and I love that you dedicated the book to your mother.
I dedicated the book to my mother. My mother loved people and believed in, the greatness of everyone. And she just made people feel so good. That was just her way. And I felt like, oh, my mom would love this book, because she always believed in the genius of everyone, that we all had it and that she could see it in everyone. That was such a gift about her that I really take to heart now.
I love it. And you're sharing her legacy with the world right now in your book. And thank you so much for doing that. And tell people where they can get your book.
Heart.Soul.Pen, my new book, is available basically everywhere you buy books, online, in the bookstores. I'm online at robinfinn.com, and I'm on Instagram at robinfinnauthor. So you can find me at any of those places. I'd love for you to come, say hi, send me an email. Love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on our show, Robin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you, Robin, and thank you for helping people find their authentic voice and their authentic selves and hope again.
Thank you so much.
Heidi and I want to thank everybody for joining us on the show today. And we always want to remind you, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.